in order to convey a sense of unity, and that in order to do so, have unity and might, which are basically go hand in hand. And by this, it has to be sectarian, cannot favor religion, and is also a very uniform body. And another organization I came across and had a lot of information from was the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, and I'll get more on that. And also just some controversies I've learned about that have been relatively recent. And the Military Religious Freedom Foundation was actually founded by a man named Mikey Weinstein. And it's a pretty, you can kind of guess what it's about. And then in this quote, what it says, when one proudly dons the U.S. military uniform, there's only one religious symbol, the American flag, there's only one religious scripture, the U.S. Constitution, and finally there is one religious faith, American patriotism. And this kind of really is a pretty strong statement towards what the mission of this organization really does in part of it. And so, kind of continuing paraphrasing on his mission, it's like, I had the entire thing originally, and took out two slides with regular font. This is very paraphrased. And ultimately, very basically, it is, no religious philosophy is endorsed, and no member of the military will be compelled to follow any sort of religious or spiritual practice. And that, but also that no member of the military will be compelled to give up their religion unless it, once again, deviates from the code of uniformity or damages the discipline or morale of the military. And the third part of it is also that no member may endure religious conversion attempts from other fellow soldiers or any person in the military in general. And this mission, this group attempts to protect against this. And some of the controversies they've worked with in the last 30 years, and really it's been a very recent issue. One that was very recent, I think 2007 or 2008, was the Jesus guns. You've heard about that. Ultimately what happened was that a missile company actually sold records to the military, had in the scopes, had bioreferences in this specific rifle picture here. You can see the John 8:12 reference, which is one of the more famous verses in the Bible. And another thing that's been happening specifically to Afghanistan and Iraq is missionary work. Obviously, this has been done by a select group of people attempting to pass on Bibles in the nation of Afghanistan and Iraq. And the military does not condone this, actually does not support it. And its main reason is we're trying to get these people to like us. This deviates from the mission that we are trying to do. And another really recent topic was Franklin Graham, and what he did ultimately was he made some very hateful comments, relatively speaking, to address one or two people of other faiths in our military who also fight the exact same way. And he was actually barred from speaking at the National Day of Prayer assembly by the Military Religious Freedom Foundation earlier. They considered that a huge success. And another controversy in Iraq that happened, I think, 2 or 3 years ago as well, was the Jesus killed Muhammad. And basically what happened was, on Easter Sunday, a group of soldiers, with the help of their translator, were able to paint these words in Arabic on their truck and just kept shouting it while going to, I believe, which is Mosul. And they were reprimanded for this afterwards by the military, as that is not a good idea. Iraq, yes. And also the case that really started it all was Goldman versus Weinberger in 1982, where the Supreme Court decides that the Jewish Air Forceman Sasha Goldman is not allowed to wear his yarmulke while on duty, because this deviates from the standard uniformity, as I said earlier. And so my second goal was to understand the influence of religion in American public schools, and what I just did really was research different sources, etc., and different topics. And the argument I said earlier, which was just the federal government does not allow religious sponsorship, no matter state action. And like the military, this is a relatively recent issue. I mean, it hasn't really garnered much attention until the 1900s, which is the past century. One of these is the Pledge of Allegiance, obviously the obvious controversy, the words under God. School prayer, another obvious. Most recently, school clubs, which is kind of interesting because we can't really relate to that. And also curriculum, which is probably the oldest. And so the Pledge of Allegiance's origins, just a quick history lesson here. Francis Bellman, a Baptist minister in 1892, came up with the pledge, which goes, "Pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." And so the first changes were made in 1923, the National Flag Conference, that is actually real. And what it said, the changes were to my flag, as to the flag of the United States of America. A kind of a minor change, and Bellamy actually did object to this, but they were of no avail. And in the 1950s, it was changed, the words under God were added, and ultimately there was much controversy today about it. And experts do believe that this could be changed, or campaigns could be for changing the pledge could happen in the future. One of them believed that from very conservative pro-life groups could attempt to add the words "born" and "unborn" at the end of the pledge, which I don't think will happen, but I've heard that argument made, and also that some very strong liberals will attempt to change to the original pledge. And just some quick arguments, some basic arguments that ultimately for under God, that it's not a prayer. It wasn't meant as a prayer. Although if you look at it that way, some people do, because it was actually founded on the concept of we need some sort of spiritual protection from the communists, and kind of. Ultimately, the United States felt very insecure during the Cold War and this was really the best way to provide some sort of sense of security. And also, the recitation of the pledge is not compulsory, which is the main reason why has been deemed acceptable, is because you can opt out of saying the pledge, or you don't have to say the words under God if you object to what you want to say. But then arguments for it just violates separation of church and state. It was in the original pledge, and it was said that the granddaughter of Francis Bellamy would have objected to this kind of change, even though he was a Baptist minister himself. And also that they're pledging allegiance to their country, and by having to do so, they pledge allegiance to a God. But at this moment in time, the pledge of allegiance in its entirety has been considered constitutional. Another school topic, once again, is school prayer, and the ruling on this has been you're allowed to have it personal, non-disruptive forms. And before that, actually, it was deemed that states were mandated that you read a prayer in the morning, like we can pledge allegiance now, which was very interesting to find out. And then the case that really decided this, that prayer was unconstitutional, was Engel versus Vitale. In 1962, families in New York of Jewish and atheist origins decided that they were going to bring the case, obviously, that reciting the Lord's Prayer before school in the morning was unconstitutional. They won on the grounds that people who are not religious have to be at school and have to hear this, and ultimately it violated the First Amendment. But it hadn't really been set in stone what defined unconstitutional, and since then any form of prayer has been decided unconstitutional. In 1985, Alabama decided that the Supreme Court in Alabama decided that their minute of silence that was required in schools every day was unconstitutional as well, on the basis of, if you're not spiritual, what do you do for a minute? You're wasting your taxpayer money. And Lee versus Wiseman in 1992, this ruled that in school graduations there would not be allowed to have clergy-led prayer, and this has actually been sent to school-led. And in 2000, most recently, many states which have a tradition of having prayer before their high school football games, praying on your team, making sure you win a high school football game, that was deemed unconstitutional as well. And so this is kind of subsequent cases, and basically the federal government has been strict on no sort of religious expression whatsoever in an organized fashion. And then with school clubs, I mean, we can't really relate to that, but many schools do have spiritual clubs of kids getting together to form these clubs. This has been deemed acceptable. Actually, there's a law that